Joining us, this is the France 24 debate, 24 hours after Venezuela's first post-Chavez presidential election, 5 weeks after his death. We're wondering, is Chavism dead or dying? We're talking about it with Venezuela watcher Natalia BRANDLER, also with us Mayela Rivero, coordinator for the Venezuelan opposition MUD party, James Cohen, who teaches political science at the University of Paris, at Paris 3. And what's the name of the campus again? Remind us.
Sorbonne Nouvelle.
Sorbonne Nouvelle. And with us from Washington, Mark Weisbrot, who is joined us as well. Mark Weisbrot, co-director of the Center for Economic and Policy Research, co-writer of Oliver Stone's documentary South of the Border. We're also joined now in Bogota by correspondent Simone Bruno. Simone, obviously across the border in Colombia, people watching Venezuela's presidential election. What are the conclusions drawn there?
Well, it's as you can imagine here, the news about Venezuela elections are mainstream news. Is very important what is happening over there on the other side of the border, mostly because Venezuela is now involved in the peace process here in Colombia. But the situation is more complex than you can imagine, because Colombia as well is a pretty polarized country, and Chavez used to be Colombian worst enemy during the Uribe era. You have to remember that during 2008, the two countries were very close to start a conflict, to start an armed conflict. So the situation now has been interpreted by at least two different positions. On one side, the people that are close to President Santos are kind of relieved of Maduro's victory, because they can be sure that Maduro is going to keep on helping Colombia during this peace process in Cuba. At one point, actually, Maduro swore to President Chavez that he was going to help Colombia to keep on going with this peace process. On the other side, all the political parties that are close to ex-President Uribe are, of course, against Maduro, and they have been, for example, tweeting all day long all the preoccupation that Capriles had.
And Hugo Chavez, again, you were saying how Colombia is divided the way that Venezuela is divided. Hugo Chavez's legacy, will it be something lasting in Colombia? As you said, at one point, the two countries were almost at war.
Yeah, well, the left of the political spectrum of Colombia, who is actually at this point represented by the Polo Democratico and Marcha Patriótica, which is a new movement that started less than a year ago. During the march of last 9 of April, they were actually showing a lot of posters, a lot of signs with Hugo Chavez's face. So on that point of view, you can say that his legacy is somehow touching Colombia as well. Probably not as much as it touched the rest of the continent, or at least the rest of South America. And on the other side, Chavism, represented now by Maduro, is still one of the worst enemy for the right-wing parties like the one that President Uribe just formed.
I want to thank you, Simone Bruno, for that update from Bogota, Colombia. James Cohen, just for our viewers who perhaps don't know Latin America very well, there was this whole talk under Hugo Chavez of a Bolivaran revolution, and it sort of swept well beyond, of course, Venezuela's border. Listening there to what Simone Bruno had to say, that's sort of those leftist ideals. What's going to be left of them?
Well, I think that there's still some dynamic going in other countries, and I haven't written off Venezuela either. Let's say that in each country it's a little bit different, and although it's often tempting for people to associate Chavez with a more quote-unquote strident version of the left in Ecuador and in Bolivia, and to dissociate them from what is presented often in the media as a more moderate and domesticated left, as in Brazil or maybe even Argentina. I think that some of those oppositions and dualities are a little bit superficial, because one of the things that Chavismo did accomplish and has accomplished is greater solidarity among Latin American republics, whatever their political stripes. Chavez has had a role did have a role in promoting a new organization of Latin American states, which excludes North America, which excludes the United States and Canada, UNASUR. So even if you leave aside the specifically Bolivarian component of Latin American solidarity under Chavez, the ALBA alliance, there are still some more permanent, durable, I think, forms of Latin American cooperation that have been not exactly initiated by Chavez, but which were pushed forward under Chavez. And I think those deserve to go forward.
Do you agree, Mayela, do you agree that there is more solidarity among Latin American countries?
I think that there is a participation, an important participation of Venezuelan in Latin American, but solidarity, I'm not totally sure. I think that there is a political component. He has a strategy, and he wanted to have very big support from the other countries, and he used the money for creating this solidarity. In reality, what are the benefits for Venezuela in all this issue is not very clear. And in terms of solidarity, I'm trying to create something that have an impact in the United States. I have a very clear position in terms of what he's trying to do in South America and in front of North America. He's talking all the time, this official position is having to be against the United States. But in reality, in Venezuela, we depend absolutely from the United States. All the oil is
Maduro was said to have made overtures to Obama the other day. Yeah. I understand there was a phone call, and then that Maduro has been initiating sort of a discrete process to improve relations with the United States. That could happen.
It needs to be transparent about the relationship, because they have been there forever, and we depend even for the food completely, or in a big part from the United States. On the other side, we talk about sovereignty. And sovereignty, something with the United States is sovereignty, but the relationship that we have with Cuba is not sovereignty. So I think that we need to talk about things that are very clear.
Speaking, Latin America is a more sovereign place. There's more autonomy within Latin America with respect to the North than ever before. And Chavism has been a component of that, an important component.
It depends on what you call sovereignty, because we have now, we still sell oil to the United States, to Texaco oil. We now are buying even oil from the United States. But not only that, the problem is that we have now all these foreign companies that are exploiting oil in Venezuela, and all these treaties are not necessarily better than the treaties we had before. Now, everybody says that Chavez was the one who did the nationalization of the oil company, which is absolutely untrue. The company was nationalized much before him.
All right.
Yes.
But there is this issue then. All right. So the disagreement over how much solidarity and independence there is vis-a-vis the North. In the build-up to Sunday's election, Cuban state television, by the way, late last week, showing images of Fidel Castro listening to a song dedicated to Chavez. He was played it by some children. The 86-year-old former leader Maximo outliving Chavez. Mark Weisbrot, when you see images of Fidel Castro today, do you sense that, well, that's the last icon of the Marxist left in Latin America?
Well, I think that's the wrong question. I mean, the left now is the dominant, the left controls most of the governments, most of the population in South America, and has left governments. And Lula da Silva, for example, produced a glowing TV ad endorsement of Maduro in this last election. This election was every bit as important to him as it was to Castro. And the same is true for Argentina and Ecuador, who sent their congratulations last night in minutes after the results were in. So you see, this is a real alliance. And the reason, you have to understand, the reason we hear so much about Chavez and Venezuela, and almost all of it is negative, every day, is because of two things. One, it's the #1 target for regime change for the United States and the world, with the possible exception of Iran. And two, It's
really, even though Barack Obama has better
500
relations
billion barrels
now
of
with,
oil.
even though Barack Obama has better relations now with Venezuela than his predecessor?
Will he have better relations? No, the United States is not interested. The United States is interested in getting rid of all the left governments. You can see what happened in Paraguay last year. There was just an investigative report on that in The Nation showing that the U.S. State Department supported that coup.
Not to mention Honduras, which is
coup in
obscene.
Honduras in 2009. They get rid of any of the ones they can. It's just that Venezuela is the crown jewel because of the 500 billion barrels of oil. And so they're going to be pushing against them, and that's reflected in the media coverage, which is, as I said, almost completely negative almost all the time. I'm glad you're having a debate here, but usually there's no debate.
Oh, well,
Probably is the reason why Cuba is in the same position as the United States, because you have the big interest in Venezuela for both of them.
And Argentina and Brazil, they all have a very strong interest in maintaining their relationship with Venezuela because they are exporting to Venezuela most of the food, and we are not exporting. I mean, in fact, the relation we had, the commercial relation we historically had with Brazil and Colombia was favorable to Venezuela. Now it has changed, and Venezuela export to Brazil has lowered, and Brazil is selling food and many other things to Venezuela. So it's their interest to maintain very good relationships with Venezuela.
The fact that Venezuela now belongs to Mercosur hasn't changed this unbalance you're talking about?
Not
no,
really?
it hasn't. It hasn't. Not for now.
In real terms, no.
And there's another thing I would like to point out, because it looks as if, Chavez was the left, and Capriles is the extreme right, as they like to show in the international media, which is absolutely wrong. I mean, to begin with, we have many leftist parties and leftist leaders, traditional leftist leaders in Venezuela who have been first against Chavez because they don't think he represented a democratic left. He represented a left. He had a program that was leftist, but he was authoritarian, and he had the control of the judicial power, electoral system, the National Assembly. I mean, he has the control of institutions. So many leftists who are democratic are supporting Capriles, and it has been for the last few years, not just now for this election.
I want to get back to the point that Mark Weisbrot made about the coverage, the way there's a slant against Chavez. It's a very impassioned debate I can see in the United States as well, Mark. Does it mirror the one that we have here in France? Whenever you mention Venezuela here in France, there's this right-left divide that suddenly pops up, and you sometimes get the sense the argument's not really about Venezuela. The argument's more about domestic politics. Here we have the party of the left and the communists who staunchly support him, the conservative papers who denounce him in stringent terms. Is it the same in the U.S.?
Well, no, not nearly as much, because France has a much stronger left, and here, of course, since this is such an imperialist country in this region, that it's very hard to even get anybody who will criticize. I mean, the things I'm talking about, like the Obama's support for the coup again, the military coup in Honduras, those aren't even discussed here, and so in the major media. And so, but I think it's oversimplistic to say that Argentina and Brazil and all these other governments support Venezuela because they like the export market, or they for purely economic reasons. This is an alliance that's based on economic and political integration in Latin America and independence. They all know, again, when the coup was taking place in Paraguay last year, 12 foreign ministers went down there. And that's because Paraguay, what does that mean to them? I mean, they don't get anything out of Paraguay. It's because they all know that, every time the United States is able to get rid of a government through extra legal means, you know, whether it's in Honduras or Paraguay, or there were attempts in Ecuador or in Bolivia, that all the countries got together to deal with it. They know that there's a serious threat from the United States. The United States still has this Cold War mentality. They don't, you know, they don't send troops anymore, but for various reasons. But they do have military bases.
Let me ask Mayela Rivero here.
Yes.
Do you agree with what Mark Weisbrot is saying, that the U.S. Wants to kick out all the left-wing governments in Latin America at all costs?
Absolutely.
I didn't say at all costs.
What?
At all, yeah? No. I mean, I think that, I cannot understand what is the position in there. I mean,
well, he did point to the events of Honduras, for example. In the first major pushback of the right in recent years took place in 2009, when basically the right, including a fairly hard right and a fairly mafia-linked right in Honduras, was given a victory because the United States didn't lift a little finger to stop it. And so that's there's really a continental divide here, which is...
That's right. All of Latin America opposed the United States on this. The United States was the only government, really, that supported the elections in November of 2009 to legitimate the coup. And all of South America, even the non-left governments, were saying, no, we can't do that. This is a dictatorship. They're repressing the media. They're throwing people in jail. They've killed people, and they won't let the elected president back into the country until there's conditions for a free election. We're not going to recognize it. The OAS didn't recognize it. The European Union wouldn't send observers. And there was the United States, the Obama administration. They fought from day one of the coup to help that coup succeed all the way through the end of the year. And that was a real eye-opener for the governments of South America.
All right. So the discussion being that there still is this divide, and there still are the same sort of power plays that are still going on today. I want to thank Mark Weisbrot for joining us from Washington. I want to thank James Cohen. Also want to thank Natalia BRANDLER and Mayela Rivero for being with us. Thank you for joining us here for the France 24 debate.